Story 1. I should have kept driving, even if it meant falling asleep at the wheel. Sleep was clawing at my eyes when I spotted the faded sign ahead, its neon flickering weakly in the night. Pine Hollow Motel, vacancy. Something about it pulled me in. Maybe desperation, maybe fate. I still don't know. The lobby was small, smelling of mildew and forgotten time. Behind the counter sat a man who didn't look up when I entered. He simply slid a key across the desk. The brass keychain read, Room 6. I thanked him and glanced at the laminated floor map taped to the counter. It showed only 5 rooms, numbered 1 through 5. With a nervous half-laugh, I asked, "Where's room 6? The man's head tilted slightly, as if the question confused him. His lips parted like he was about to answer, but then pressed shut. When he finally spoke, the words were flat and too soft. End of the hall. I was too tired to press further. The hall was narrow, dim bulbs buzzing overhead. The numbers passed by, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then, just as he said, at the very end of the corridor stood a door with a crooked metal plate. 6. The key turned roughly, like the lock hadn't been used in years. The room inside wasn't strange at first, just threadbare carpet, peeling wallpaper, the smell of dust, but it felt wrong. The silence was thick, the kind where your thoughts stumble into it and echo back too loudly. I tried to laugh off the feeling, kicked off my boots, and lay on the creaking bed. My body welcomed the mattress, but my mind wouldn't rest. Every creak seemed deliberate, every shadow deeper than it should be. Then I heard it, a whisper. At first I thought it was the plumbing or wind through cracks in the walls, but then it rose again, sharper, clear enough that my stomach tightened. It was saying my name. I sat up, heart thundering, staring at the walls as if they might peel and reveal someone crouched inside. The whisper came again, longer this time. Dozens of voices, overlapping, weaving together. They weren't muffled, not like neighbors through thin walls. They were inside the walls, close enough for their breath to brush my ear. Daniel. Hearing your own name, drawn out in tones of pleading and hunger, can freeze every part of you. My hands shook as I grabbed the key from the nightstand. Enough was enough. I wasn't staying here another second. I swung the door open and stepped into the hallway. Relief flooded me until I noticed it looked wrong. The walls stretched farther than they had before. The hall didn't end where I remembered. More doors lined each side, numbers repeating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No room 6. Behind me, the door I'd left swung shut with a heavy thud. When I turned back, the plate with the number was gone. Just a blank door, indistinguishable from the rest. Panic set in. I stumbled forward, trying door after door. Some wouldn't open at all, the keys jamming useless in their locks. Others swung wide to reveal the exact same room 6. Identical. The same cracked wallpaper, the same stale bedspread, the same whispering walls. I tried to run, but the hallway stretched endlessly, looping back on itself. No matter how far I went, I ended up at the same intersection, the same flickering light, the same smell of mold. And always, the whispers followed. Sometimes pleading, "Stay with us." Sometimes mocking, "You shouldn't have come," but always, always using my name. At one point, exhausted and trembling, I pressed my ear to the wall. The voices stopped instantly, all at once, as if holding their breath. For a heartbeat, silence returned, deeper than before. Then, almost tenderly, a single voice hissed from within. "We're still waiting for you." I staggered back. That was my mother's voice. She's been dead for 5 years. I don't know how long I've been here. Hours, days? My watch died. My phone displays nothing but static. Every hallway leads back to room 6, and every time I enter, it feels a little changed. Sometimes the wallpaper peels like old flesh. Sometimes the bed is already occupied by a figure that looks like me, asleep but breathing. I don't sleep anymore. I'm too afraid that if I close my eyes, I won't wake up as myself. Maybe I'll wake up on the other side of the wall, one of the voices calling out to some new traveler. If anyone finds this, if this story reaches outside these halls, please understand, there is no room 6 on the map. If someone hands you that key, don't take it, no matter how tired you are. Keep driving. Because once you check in, you don't check out. Story 2. I used to think the creepiest thing in a motel room was the dirty carpet or the sketchy stains on the sheets. Now I know better. Now I know what it feels like to have someone staring at you from the shadows, inches away, hidden where you would never think to look. It happened last summer when my girlfriend Lisa and I were backpacking across states. We didn't have much money, so roadside motels were our only real option. That night, we stopped at the Hillside Inn, a squat, peeling building that looked like it had been forgotten decades ago. The neon vacancy sign only lit up the "Wansee," which should have been a warning. The lobby was empty except for a gum-snapping woman behind the desk. She barely looked up when we checked in. Our room was at the end of a quiet hallway, the kind where every step echoed. Inside, the air was stale. The wallpaper peeled in curling strips, like skin in a bad sunburn. The bed sagged in the middle with a permanent dip. But exhaustion always wins over comfort. Lisa threw her bag on the bed with a groan, and I dropped beside her. At first, it felt normal. We showered, flipped through the broken TV channels, and finally slid beneath the scratchy sheets. But sometime past midnight, I woke to a sound. Scratching. It was faint at first, like nails dragging against metal. I thought maybe it was a branch outside scraping against the window, but then I realized it was coming from inside the room. I sat up, holding my breath. Lisa slept beside me, her face peaceful. The sound grew louder, definitely coming from the vent above the dresser. I slipped out of bed quietly and grabbed my phone for light. Standing beneath the vent, I could hear it clearly now, the shuffle of movement, the dragging of something against the narrow duct. Rats, I told myself. Old motel like this, of course there'd be rats. I almost believed it. But when I raised my phone flashlight and pointed it into the vent, something looked back at me. An eye. A wide, pale human eye. The lid didn't blink. The skin around it was clammy and almost gray, as if it had never seen the sun. It stared directly at me, so close that the lashes touched the vent grate. I gasped and stumbled back, crashing into the nightstand. The lamp toppled over and Lisa bolted up, startled. "What's wrong?" she whispered. My voice shook. "There's someone in the vent." By the time she swung her flashlight up, the eye was gone. Just emptiness, silent and black. Lisa thought I'd been dreaming until she saw my face. She's never seen me that shaken before. To prove I wasn't crazy, I unscrewed the vent cover with my pocket knife. The duct was too dark to see far, but the metal inside showed new scuff marks, the kind left by knees and palms dragging along. I went straight down to the front desk. The gum-snapping woman raised an eyebrow as I told her what happened. She listened with dead eyes, then shrugged. "Nobody else in that block of rooms," she said flatly. "Couldn't be." I pressed harder, demanded she check, but she just shook her head. "Quiet night. You must have dreamed it." I wanted to argue more, but her blank expression unsettled me almost as much as the eye. Finally, I retreated, unsettled and sleepless. Lisa and I lay in silence until morning. She believed me now, if only because I refused to close my eyes again. Every creak of the building, every whisper of pipes, I imagined that pale face crawling closer through hidden passages. When dawn finally broke through the grimy blinds, we packed in record time. I didn't even shower. We practically ran from the room, threw the key on the counter, and didn't look back. It should have ended there. Just a creepy story, the kind couples laugh about later. But as we walked across the cracked parking lot toward our car, a maintenance worker rolled past, pushing a rattling cart piled with tools. The cart hit a bump, and something slid off. A dusty vent cover. And that's when I saw it, lying in plain daylight. The long black smear of greasy handprints along the inside, like someone had been dragging themselves through. Lisa saw it too. We didn't speak until we'd driven for miles, the inn vanishing in the rearview mirror. That's when the truth settled like a rock in my stomach. I hadn't imagined that. Someone had been inside the walls, inside the ducts, moving silently above us. And not just us. Other rooms had identical vents, other beds, other sleeping travelers. The motel hadn't been hiding rats. It had been hiding him. And worst of all, he was still in there, still crawling, probably watching the next exhausted couple who checked into that cursed, cheap little room. Story 3. When you drive long hauls like I do, the road stops feeling like freedom. It feels endless, like being trapped in a dark river that never reaches the sea. That night, I had pushed myself too far. My eyelids drooped heavy. My hands were trembling on the wheel. I knew I couldn't go on. That's when I saw the sign, Haven Motel, Vacancy. The name felt ironic the moment I pulled in. Haven looked anything but safe. The building was old, its wooden siding bleached by the sun and curling with rot. But exhaustion doesn't give you choices. The man at the reception barely glanced at me. His expression was pale and waxy, as if carved out of candlelight. Without a word, he slid a tarnished brass key across the counter. Room 9. I scribbled my name on the check-in sheet. No small talk, no smile. Just the faint sound of his pen scratching paper behind the desk after I walked away, like he was writing something down. The room was ordinary enough. A cracked mirror, a bed that groaned when I sat on it, curtains that smelled of dust. I'd stayed in, worse. My plan was simple. 4 hours of sleep, back on the road before sunrise. I tugged open the nightstand drawer, expecting the usual battered Bible. What I found instead was an old guest book. Its leather was dark, cracked, decades old. The pages inside were yellowed, filled with lists of names, each neatly written in ink, and everyone followed by the same word in red: departed. I flipped page after page. Hundreds of names, each one crossed by that grim little note: departed. The word wasn't even written the same way every time. Different pens, different hands. It felt ritualistic, like a record of souls instead of visitors. And then I froze. There was my name, written in my own sloppy handwriting from just an hour ago, when I'd signed the desk register. And next to it, in fresh red ink that hadn't been there before, gleamed the word, departed. The page smelled faintly metallic, like blood. I slammed the book shut, my chest tight. It wasn't funny. Someone was messing with me. I tried to shake it off. Lay down. Closed my eyes. Sleep wouldn't come. The room seemed to breathe. The shadows along the walls pulsed, stretching long, then shrinking back. At first, I thought it was headlights flashing past the window outside. But when I checked, the parking lot was dark and empty. Back on the bed, the air grew colder. The shadows didn't just shift, they moved. One shape detached from the wall entirely, like smoke peeling away from fire. It slid across the room, slow and fluid, like it had weight. 2 more followed. They settled in silent corners, vague shapes of people. A man with wide shoulders and a hat. A woman with her head lowered like she was weeping. A child standing stiff, eyes like hollow pits. I scrambled back against the headboard. My mouth opened to scream, but something heavy pressed down on my chest, crushing the sound in my throat. The shadows didn't speak, but I swear I heard them in my head, a whisper layered with many voices. We never left. The guest book's word burned in my mind. Departed. It hadn't meant they checked out. It meant they died here, and now I was next. The door rattled. My chance. I tried to leap for it, but my legs felt bound by invisible hands. A chill crawled over my ankles, gripping, dragging me towards the drawer where I had left the book. The shadows crowded closer, their faceless heads leaning toward me. I could feel their hunger, emptiness trying to pull me in. Desperation lit a fire in me. With everything I had, I heaved myself toward the door. My fingers brushed the knob, just enough to twist. The air slammed into me like a fist, and suddenly I was in darkness again. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains when I opened my eyes. Had it been a dream? The shadows were gone, the air no longer icy. My body felt sore, like I'd fought something all night. Too shaken to care, I shoved my things into my bag. I didn't even brush my teeth. Just grabbed the key, stormed out to the front desk, and dropped it hard onto the counter. The clerk wasn't the same man from before. A different one, older, eyes disinterested. "How was your stay?" he asked, without looking at me. I didn't answer. I just turned to leave, but then his voice halted me in my tracks. "Don't forget to sign the book." He gestured to the register. The same old leather guest book lay open beside him. Its pages fluttered softly, as if stirred by breath. My name was still there. The red ink beside it darker now, darker than blood. I haven't driven since. I don't know how I made it out. Maybe I never did. Some nights, when the room around me feels colder than it should, I wonder if I'm still lying in that bed at the Haven Motel, another shadow among the departed, waiting for the next traveler to open that drawer. Story 4. When I think about that trip, I try to laugh like the others do. Remember the creepy motel? But the truth is, the memory still makes my skin crawl. We were 4 friends on a long summer road trip. Me, Aaron, Jess, and Maya. Tired, hungry, and running low on cash, we pulled into the first cheap motel we saw off the highway. Its glowing sign read, Sunny Rest Lodge. The name alone was a lie. The office was lit with a sickly yellow tube light. Behind the desk stood the receptionist, a thin woman with a stiff posture, her smile stretched wide but lifeless. "Welcome," she said. Her tone was flat, too careful, like she was reading from a script. "How? May I help you?" Jess grinned at us, mouthing robot. We almost burst out laughing. We asked for 2 rooms. Without looking down, the woman reached for the keys as if she'd already known what we wanted. Her movements were jerky, just a second too slow, her eyes blinking with odd pauses, lids lingering shut before snapping open again. Aaron joked under his breath. "She's buffering." That set us off. We snickered like kids in a classroom. She just stared at us, smile never changing. Then came the phrase, again, in the same monotone. "Enjoy your stay," word for word, like she couldn't say anything else. We didn't stop noticing. The man sweeping the parking lot lifted his broom in the same stiff arc, over and over, never looking down. The maid who passed us in the hall offered the exact same smile and the exact same greeting. "Enjoy your stay." Like they'd been taught one sentence and nothing more. Creepy? Sure. But we were tired. We laughed it off, lugged our bags into the rooms and joked about killer androids while drinking cheap soda from the vending machine. By midnight, we'd forgotten the weirdness and crashed. I woke up first. A sound pulled me up from sleep, a faint thrum, almost like humming wires. Blinking in the dark, I checked the time on my phone. 3:03 a.m. I thought maybe the AC was dying, so I got up. That's when I noticed it. Light spilling into the room from a line in the curtains. I don't know what made me peek, but my stomach still knots up when I remember pulling those curtains apart. There they were. Every staff member we had seen that day, the receptionist, the sweeping man, the maid, more figures too, like they'd called others out from wherever they slept. All of them standing in the parking lot, not moving, not speaking, just standing perfectly still, facing our room. The receptionist smiled up at me with the same wide grin, but her head tilted slightly, like she knew I was the one watching. I stumbled back with a curse which woke Aaron. "What's wrong?" he mumbled. I couldn't even explain. Look. He dragged himself up, still half conscious, and peeked out. His sharp intake of breath woke Jess and Maya. Soon, all four of us were staring through the thin curtain at nearly a dozen people, frozen in the night, their faces tilted toward us. Except, no, they weren't even all facing properly. Some of their heads were turned too far, necks angled wrong, like broken dolls propped upright. Jesus Christ, Jess whispered. Her voice cracked. What the hell are they doing? Maya shook her head hard. Are they waiting for us? The question made me cold, because that's exactly what it felt like, as though they had been expecting this moment. We argued in low voices. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe they were sleepwalking, some bizarre cult ritual or drugs. None of those guesses really fit, but admitting the truth that we had no explanation was worse. Finally, Aaron said it. We leave. Now. Our van was parked at the far edge of the lot. The staff, creatures, people, stood between. None of us wanted to open the door, but as we hesitated, a new movement froze us. The receptionist blinked, not slowly now, not robotic. She snapped her eyelids shut and opened 5, 6, 7 times in fast succession, like a signal, and then they started walking toward us, not running, not rushing, just pacing forward in perfect unison, arms swinging stiffly, smiles plastered in place. Panic broke us. Aaron yanked the curtain shut. Jess was already fumbling to grab her shoes, shouting we had to make a run for it. I could hear the crunch of their synchronized footsteps over gravel. Maya grabbed my arm. Don't open the door, she hissed. That's what they want. They're waiting. She was right. Some instinct deep inside me screamed that if we opened that door, we wouldn't make it out, that we'd end up with faces just like theirs. But then, silence. We froze, breaths loud in the stillness. No footsteps, no more crunching gravel. Aaron risked a peek. The lot was empty, completely empty. Everyone, gone. We did not sleep after that. At first light, we bolted. Checking out wasn't an option. We barely slowed the car long enough for Jess to toss the keys onto the office steps. The lobby had been dark anyway. As we sped back onto the highway, silence sat thick in the van. Nobody wanted to speak first. Eventually, Jess whispered, "Did that happen?" Nobody answered. But sometimes, when the night is very still, I swear I hear it again. That sound. Feet crunching in perfect rhythm, closer and closer, like they're still waiting outside, wherever we stop next. Story 5. When you work as many hours as I do, sleep becomes a prize you're always chasing, but never really winning. That night, I had flown across the country for yet another meeting, and by the time my cab pulled into the Riverside Inn, I was running on fumes. The motel was nothing special, green carpet, buzzing neon sign outside, but all I wanted was a bed. The receptionist barely spoke. He slid me a key on a chipped wooden fob, room 14. His smile didn't reach his eyes. The room was standard, yellowed walls, the faint smell of mold masked poorly by lemon-scented disinfectant. I dropped my suitcase, loosened my tie, and collapsed onto the bed. Sleep was already closing in when the knock came. 3 sharp raps on the door. I groaned, pulled myself up, and cracked it open. A covered tray sat neatly on the floor. "Room service," said a voice down the hall, though I saw no one there. I frowned. I didn't order anything. Still, curiosity made me lift the lid. Inside lay a slab of raw, bloody meat. The smell hit me instantly, sour and metallic. I gagged, shoved the tray aside, and shut the door. Crawling back into bed, I muttered to myself, "Weird prank. Whatever." An hour later, another knock came. This time I ignored it, pulled the pillow over my head. But the knocking didn't stop. It grew faster, louder, until I stumbled up and yanked the door open. Another tray waited. I lifted the lid. Inside lay a jumble of broken toys, dolls with their heads twisted backward, tiny cars with missing wheels, action figures scorched black as if burned. I felt a chill. The food service prank wasn't funny anymore. "Not hungry," I muttered shakily into the hallway. "Stop bothering me," but there was no one to hear. By the third hour, 3 a.m., I was trembling when the knock came again. I didn't want to open the door, but I couldn't ignore it. My hand quivered on the knob. Another tray. This time, under the lid, lay something wet, misshapen. Piles of organs, small, slick, grayish, not quite human, not quite animal. The smell hit like decay and copper. I gagged, nearly vomiting, shoved the lid back on. I staggered to the lobby, desperate. The hall seemed different. The lights flickered as if struggling to stay alive. When I reached what should have been the reception desk, my stomach dropped. There it was. Room 14. The exact same door I'd left minutes earlier. No matter where I turned, left, right, upstairs, every path curved back to the numbered door with the peeling paint and the tray still waiting outside. The motel had swallowed me whole. Panic clawed up my throat. I pounded on random doors, pleading for anyone, but they all opened onto one room. My own. The bed, the yellow walls, the growing stack of trays inside. Each time I opened the door, more trays had appeared, already waiting. Dozens of them. The floor disappeared beneath them, a carpet of metal and glass lids. I tried to shove them aside, but each time I cleared a space, more trays arrived. Knocks on the door, over and over, louder, faster, like 100 knuckles beating in rhythm. With each delivery, the items grew worse. Not just meat or organs now, photographs of people I didn't know, their eyes scratched out, children's shoes, wet hair bundled like offerings. By 4 a.m., my room was no longer a room. It was a maze of trays stacked high, leaning against the walls, tilting toward me like they might collapse and bury me alive. I could hardly move without knocking into one, lids sliding off to reveal horrors. Blood, glass, teeth. The knocks became constant. Every time I opened the door, more trays appeared like they'd been waiting in endless supply. And if I didn't open the door, the knocking shook the walls so hard I thought the building itself might crumble. I tried screaming for help. My voice echoed strangely, bouncing back like the hallway had no end. But I knew no one would answer. I was alone in the motel's belly, feeding something unseen. I wanted to smash the phone in the room, call someone, police, friends, anyone. But the line only hissed with static, and buried inside that static was faint laughter. By dawn, the trays reached the ceiling. The pressure of them pushed me against the bed, narrowing the space until I could barely breathe. That's when I realized it. This wasn't food service at all. It was a ritual. The motel wasn't serving me. It was serving me to something else. And soon it would arrive to feast. I don't know how I got out, or if I ever did. Sometimes, driving down lonely highways, I see little motels on the roadside, the kind with buzzing neon signs and empty lots, and I wonder, am I still in room 14, suffocating beneath towers of trays, imagining the world outside? Or did the motel let me go just so I could lead others back? Because every so often, when I rest in a new town, I wake at 3 a.m. to a knock on the door. Always 3 knocks. And when I check, there's always a tray waiting. Story 6. People think monsters hide in closets or under the bed. I know better. Sometimes they live inside the television. It was the summer before my senior year. My parents loved road trips, which meant hours of being crammed into the back seat while cornfields and empty highways stretched forever. One night, we stopped at a roadside motel, Maple Pine Inn. From the outside, it looked ordinary. Old sign buzzing, paint peeling, parking lot half empty. My dad said it was cozy. I called it cheap. But arguing didn't matter. We were too tired to keep driving. The room had 2 queen beds. My parents took one. My little brother and I took the other. Everything smelled faintly of cigarettes and cleaning solution. The air conditioner wheezed like it was dying. I was restless, so I grabbed the remote from the nightstand. That's when things got strange. Every button I pressed just landed me on one channel. One. Snowy static filled the screen, gray and white dots shifting fast. At first it made me dizzy, like staring into a strobe light, but then I realized it wasn't just static. There were shapes in the blur. Just for a second I thought I saw a silhouette of a person walking across. Then it was gone. Another flicker, and I swore I caught the outline of a hand reaching before dissolving into snow. Stupid broken TV, I muttered, but I couldn't look away. Minutes passed. The static twisted and bent, like something was trying to come through. That's when I saw her. Me. There I was, flickering in the screen, sitting on the motel bed, wearing the exact shirt I had on. Not frozen, not a reflection, but moving. In the picture, I laughed at something, turned to say something to Dad. But here, in reality, I hadn't laughed. I hadn't spoken. Not yet. I blinked and looked over my shoulder. Then, seconds later, it actually happened. A joke from my brother, me laughing, me turning to Dad to say exactly what I'd just seen on the TV. The screen hadn't shown the present. It had shown the future. I should have shut it off, pulled the plug, anything. But my stomach was churning with curiosity. I wanted to know what else I'd see. The future me appeared again. This time, I was standing near the window, pulling the curtain aside. A shadow loomed outside, tall and thin. I gasped and backed away from the TV, then froze. Because right on cue, my legs carried me to the curtain. My hand trembled as I pulled it aside. There was nothing there, just the parking lot, empty under flickering lights. Still. The shadow had been so real. Sick with fear, I tried to sleep. I tossed, turned, buried my face in the pillow. But the hum of the static pulled at me like a whisper. At 2:47 a.m., I couldn't resist anymore. I sat up, grabbed the remote, and clicked the screen back on. Static filled the darkness. My reflection appeared in it again. But this time, I wasn't alone. The shapes around my family's beds grew solid. Dark, shadowy figures. They swarmed like smoke given human form. Long arms, faceless heads. In the screen, I watched as they dragged my parents and my brother from their beds, silently pulling them into the corners of the room, into blackness that didn't exist in reality. "No," I whispered. "That's not real. That can't be real." But it looked real. Too real. Heart racing, I spun toward the beds to wake my family. "Mom? Dad? Tyler?" The words died in my throat. Their beds were empty. Sheets pulled back, pillows tossed. Still warm as if they'd just been lying there, but no one in sight. Panic clawed at me. My family was gone. Just gone. I ran to the bathroom, empty, checked the door, still locked from the inside. No sound, no sign of struggle, just a silence so deep it made my ears ache. The TV hissed behind me. I turned, heart thudding. On the screen, the static figures smiled. No faces, but I could feel the smile. They were holding hands, pulling shadows across the floor of the motel room, sweeping outward, stretching closer to the place where I stood. For a moment, I saw myself on screen too. Back pressed to the wall, face pale, eyes wide, my exact pose. Then I shifted, and the image shifted a second later. It was catching up. I ran to the door, fumbling with the lock, yanking it open. The hallway stretched forever, longer than it had been before. Dim lights blinked, buzzing overhead. Every door was marked 12, 12, 12, like the building itself had looped. The static still hummed from inside. I could hear voices in it now, faint, broken laughter layered beneath the snow. My family's laughter among it. I don't remember how I got out. Maybe I didn't. Because sometimes, when I fall asleep in strange hotels, I dream in static. I hear faint knocks, the fizz of snowy channels. And in the dream, my family is always there, sitting just out of reach, dragged again and again into the flickering screen. And me? I never look away. For more stories like this, share and subscribe Goofy Horror.